Welcome again to my YouTube channel. My name is Joshua, and today I am doing a breakdown of how much you would need, an estimate really, of how much you're going to need if you're going to be processing the Canadian permanent resident visa. Alright, but before we fly into it, let's first talk about some assumptions. Number one, we're assuming here that one Canadian dollar converts to 290 naira. Now, I know the rates varies from one seller to another. This morning I checked the www.exchangerate.org and I saw 286 naira. But just to be on a safer side, right? Sometimes getting it at those website rates is usually tough. So I've put an additional 4 naira to it to round it up to 290. So I'm assuming that one Canadian dollars is equals to 290 naira, Nigerian naira. And then another assumption I'm making is that everything we're doing is as at June 2020, right? Which is when the video is being made. And things can change from time to time, right? Even as at April, the amount applicable for submitting your visa is different from what it is now. So things change from time to time, and I know that especially for the visa, the Canadian government changed that like every 2 years thereabout. So if you're watching this 2 years down the line, these estimates would have changed definitely. All right, and the next also is that we're assuming that you have not lived over 6 months in more than one country, and this is the reason why we are making that assumption. Your police clearance certificate, if you don't know what that means, you should watch my last video where I talked about the documents you will need for express entry, right? Now, for your police clearance certificate, we're assuming you're doing just one, right? But if you have lived more than 6 months in any other country, you'd have to do for those other countries, right? So if you fall into the category of someone that has lived in more than one country for over 6 months, then you would need to do more than one police clearance certificate. Then the last assumption here is that your education credential assessment was done with World Education Service (WES). Alright, so let's talk about the stages of expenses. I've tried to break it down in the order in which you would be applying, in which you'll be spending the money, right? So the first you talk about your education credential assessment, then we'll talk about your language test, then we'll talk about your express entry profile creation, we'll talk about documents collection or documents gathering, we talk about visa application submission, and then we talk about your visa or passport stamping. Right, so the first one is education credential assessment. Now, for education credential assessment, if you go to the WES website, you would see this before you submit your application. Now, if you look at the two amounts circled in red, you will see a $220 and then you will see a $10. Now, someone asked me, I think last week, should I go for standard or should I go for tracking? What is the difference? Standard is no tracking, whereas if you do international courier, there's tracking. Standard is $10, international is $85. If you ask me, I will tell you to go for standard. Unless you have plenty money, of course, you can do international. But trust me, you don't even need a hard copy of these reports, right? Once they finish the report, they're going to send you a soft copy. The soft copy is enough for you to submit your upload on your application profile. So as far as I'm concerned, standard is very fine. So I'm going to be doing my estimation with standard. So $10 and $20, that comes to $230. So if you look at that, $230 times 290 comes to 66,700 naira. Now I've added an additional transcript cost from your school. Now this varies from school to school, of course. In my case, I spent about 25,000 naira applying for transcript from University of Lagos. In your school, it might be up to 50,000, it might be 30,000, it might be 20,000. It really depends. That's why I've chosen to just leave it as plus transcript cost from your school. So you should do your own addition depending on your own school. All right. So the next thing we want to look at is your language test. Now, for language test, you can either choose to write with IDP or you choose to write with British Council. If you choose to write with IDP, you'll be spending 73,000. If you choose to write with British Council, you'll be spending 75,000. Now, here again, it depends on how many times you eventually end up writing IELTS, right? I've done 2 videos on IELTS, which I believe should be helpful. I've also dropped some materials in the video I did on IELTS, which I'll put a link to the video in the description. Those videos are super helpful, and there are materials there that people have also attested to as being helpful. So do as much as possible to take advantage of these free materials and resources, and make sure you get to write your IELTS once. And if you have written before, the next one should be the last one you write. So depending on the number of times you've written IELTS, you can then do the multiples by yourself. All right, the next one we'll talk about is your express entry profile creation. Now, I did a video on express entry profile creation, and how much does it cost you? It is absolutely free. You don't need to spend any money on creating your profile. If you need a guide on how to go about creating your profile, I've already done a video on creating your profile, and I'll put a link in the description box also, which of course you'll find very helpful. Now, the next one we'll talk about is document collection. I think this is where the bulk of your expenses come. First, I will talk about medicals. Now, for medicals, if you watch my last video on documents you need for express entry, I mentioned that in Nigeria, you can do your medicals with either IOM. IOM is International Organization for Migration. You can either do it with IOM or you do it with QLife. Now, if you're doing it for IOM, you would spend, depending on the number of people coming, right? So I've put all this information here for the amount, just in case you're more than one person traveling. But then I am using a single applicant assumption. So I'm going to go with 41,400 for IOM. And why did I pick IOM? Most people go for IOM. The reason is, for IOM, most times, not always, but most times you'll find out that if you have to book an appointment, you will usually get a closer date with IOM compared to QLife. QLife, let's say for example, if you're getting a date of June 20th with IOM, you probably will be getting July 5th or July 7th with QLife. So for that reason, most people go with IOM. But then if you're trying to save costs and you have time on your side, for example, if you're here to get your IT and you just want to, you're still in the pool waiting for the next draws, of course you have time on your hand, and then you can consider Q Live because it's cheaper. But for this video, I'm going to take an assumption of 41,400. All right, police clearance certificate, you need an estimate of 5,000 to do police clearance certificate. And again, this is an estimate. It's not an official amount. So it's more like the police, whoever is doing it for you, ask you for an amount, and it's just more like an appreciation, right? I'm not sure what the official amount is. You know, the way Nigeria is really, officially it could be 300, it could be 1,000. I'm not sure what the official amount is, but usually you would spend around 5,000, 3,000, 4,000, depending really on your ability to negotiate with whoever the officer that is helping you do the police clearance certificate. All right, and this is also assuming that you have not lived outside Nigeria for more than 6 months, because if you have stayed outside Nigeria for more than 6 months, then you would need a police certificate from that country where you have lived over 6 months, right? So that then would depend on that country. So that is also an assumption that you've only lived in Nigeria, so you need only Nigerian police clearance certificate. If you've gone for holidays in other countries and maybe you spent 2 months, you spent 1 month, you spent 3 months, as long as you didn't spend up to 6 months in other country, then you don't need a police clearance certificate. All right, the next expense we'll be talking on is still on document, but this time around we'll talk about proof of fund. This is a stage where many people really get stuck, right? In my last video, I talked pretty much about proof of fund. You'll find it useful. Just take out time to watch my video on documents needed. Now for proof of fund, right, for a single applicant you need about 12,960 Canadian dollars. For two, if it is you and your spouse, you need 16,135, and so on and so forth. All right. Again, assuming a single applicant of $12,960, it comes to 3,758,400 naira. Up next, we'll be talking about the fees for visa application. Now, for visa application, you will need processing fee of $825, right of permanent residence fee of $500, biometrics of $85. The total comes to $1,410. Now, before now, I think processing fee used to be $550. It was increased effective from May 1st, 2020, right? So you see, I think right of permanent residence was also $490. And also, you should note the right of permanent residence fee is not a must you pay immediately at the point of submitting your profile, your application, right? But when they eventually approve your application, then you will need to pay. But it's advisable you pay because then you'll save delay. If you don't pay at the point of submission and you wait till they approve your application before paying, then you would face some kind of delay in between. But the money is 100% refundable. If they end up not approving your application, you will be refunded for this money. Processing fee is also refundable as long as they've not started processing your application, right? So if your application is incomplete and they cancel it, your processing fee is refundable if they've not started. But if they've started processing, then the processing fee is not refundable. All right. You should also know that for each dependent child, there's a $225 that applies. All right. For a single applicant, then $1,410 times 290 comes to 408,900 naira. All right, next we'll talk about your passport stamping. Now, your passport stamping is also free. Before now, as I when I did mine, I spent I think 21 or 23,000 thereabouts. But I think there were some protests that made them scrap that fee. So as long as you go to the same place where you did your biometrics, provided you visit same visa office where you did your biometrics, your passport stamping is free. So once you get your golden email, they call it golden email, that's a passport request email. Once you get it, you go to the visa office, you drop your biometrics, that's the VFS, you drop your passport for stamping. This is free, but make sure you go with your biometrics receipt, the receipt you were given when you did your biometrics. Okay, so up next we'll talk about the total cost. Now if you look at that total, at ECA you spend about 66,700, language test you spend about 73,000, medical you spend about 41,400, police clearance you spend about 5,000, proof of fund you have about 3.7 million, visa application you spend about 408,000, and in total it comes to 4.35 million. This is assumption of a single applicant. Now if you're more than one, of course you can do the multiples as the case may be. Okay, so some of you have questions. This proof of fund is a lot. What should I do? What can I do? I shared some tips that you find helpful in my video on documents required for express entry. If you check the link in the description below, you would see the video, and of course it will be very helpful for you. Now remember, this is an estimate. There will be some extra costs that might come in depending on the peculiarity of your case. For example, some instances you might need to do some notarization of document. In some instances you might need to do some affidavit. Depending on your own peculiarity, some extra cost might come in. Of course, we have also not considered the fees that come with transportation and filing and so on and so forth. So there are many miscellaneous that can come into it, but these are like the major basic expenses that you should really take note of. Okay, so before you leave, please, I'll be grateful if you can subscribe to my channel, like and share. And also there is a bell below. Please click on the bell so that you get notification. This will help others easily find this video, and it also improves the algorithm that YouTube uses to make this video available and ready for people to find. I'm counting on you to help me make this video get as many views as possible. Till I come your way again next week, please do take care of yourself, and thank you for watching. Thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, thank you for sharing. If you have any comment, any question whatsoever, please use the comment box and I'll be very happy to respond and help you in any way I can. If you think I've missed out on any course, please share in the comment section below. Thank you for your time again, and keep your dream alive.